evening, you're with ET Now. This is the India Development Debate. I'm Sandeep, Gurumurthi joining in from the News Centre in Mumbai. Joining me in Delhi is my colleague and co-anchor Supriya, Shrinate. Straight to the first debate tonight. Then it's a special edition with two debates. The first one, can a very senior bureaucrat's grandson and great-grandson be treated as backward for promotion, and that too in perpetuity? This crucial question from Supreme Court has once again thrown open the debate on the quota system in promotions. A 5-judge bench headed by Chief Justice Deepak Misra observed that there is no problem with entry-level reservations, but what is worrying is the accelerated promotions of SC/ST employees without looking into the status and merits of the employment. Arguing against quota and promotions, former Law Minister Shanti Bhushan says that it will be a disastrous move.
Indeed. Now, interestingly, the centre is siding with the existing reservation system for promotions in government job. Attorney General K.K. Venugopal today said that once a caste is given the SC/ST status, there is no need for a case-by-case adjudication. But the crucial question remains, at a time when the country is preparing for a big leap, can quota come in the way of competitiveness, especially when it comes to high-ranking administrative jobs? Those are some of the questions that we are debating right here on the India Development Debate tonight, because the other important question also continues to be, if not quota, then what do you do for inclusion and other things like that? Joining us on this show is a panel of very relevant voices right here. We've got R. Jagannathan, Editorial Director, Swarajya Magazine; Kanchan Elaya, activist for Dalit rights; Naren Taneja, spokesperson of the BJP; and Raghav Avasthi, lawyer and RSS member. You may be wondering, why do I have one from the ideologue and one from the party? Because they seem to be speaking in two different languages at this point in time. But I think it's only fair that I begin with the activist Kanchan Elaya. Let me begin with you. At the heart of this debate, and like Sandeep had in his opening comments said and raised the question, is a very simple question that India's apex court has today observed. It says, does the grandson or the great-grandson of an IAS officer from a scheduled caste or scheduled tribe need quota and promotion? That is the very basic question. Yes, you're right, the social milieu is different, which is why reservations are required. But is it required for a second and a third generation?
No, the issue is that so long as the caste system survives in the civil society and caste-based discrimination survives, it does not exist only among the poor. The caste discrimination exists even among the rich and generational upward mobile people as well. Now, this is where the question of reservations among scheduled castes, whether one is rich, whether one is first generation or second generation, is continuing. Now, the issue is related to the question of religion, the question of social practice, the question of totally equal education, whether language or medium or syllabus and so on, and the question of dignity of labor in the market-based market and society. So long as these systems remain unequal like that, this reservation, whether at the entry level or at the promotion level, needs to continue. That is the argument.
Take that point, Kanchan Elaya. Allow me to interrupt you there, Kanchan Elaya. Let me get in a word from R. Jagannathan as well. I take your point. You're making a case for why it needs to continue, and the fact that there are a lot of sort of a level playing field needs to be there across the board for it to happen. Jaggi, historically, the creamy layer criterion that's used to exclude affluent OBCs from reservation benefits has not been applicable to SC/ST reservations, and the justification for that has been the fact that that the reservation for SC/ST is not for sort of economical benefit alone, but it's for social upliftment. Does that argument continue to hold in the India of 2018?
See, I think what Mr. Kanchan Elaya says, one half of the argument is fine, that there has been a long multi-generational discrimination, so it will take some time to end it. But the point is, here you are talking about discrimination within discrimination. That means you are talking about say the poorest among the SC/ST being denied a chance for reservation, because the people who have already benefited from it will continue benefiting from it and will continue sort of improving their lot in life at the cost of their own people. I mean, I think I can see this. I think Ambedkar would be horrified if he thinks this is the way this reservation is going to be implemented, where the idea was to lift the last man. Here what you are doing is you have taken somebody, let's say, who was a last man about say three generations ago, and today his sons and his grandsons, and he may have married into multiple castes and various things, and this still continues endlessly. I mean, I think we are talking about a situation where you are going to perpetuate the real rift within, say, Dalits also. There is going to be now multiple levels of anger there. So, I think you have got to definitely start eliminating after one generation at least. People who have already benefit should not continue, because they ought to have found, they should then be looking at only economic upliftment. They should not be getting benefits through the reservation route.
I'm just going to come to you. Just give me a minute, Mr. Awasthi. But let me quickly get in Naren Taneja here. And Naren Taneja, you know, there is a lot of politics behind this entire debate, and which is why I think you and your ideologue are somehow speaking in two different tones on this. The BJP, meanwhile, likes to project itself as a progressive party, one that talks about development, cares about creating a new India. Why don't you then bring some new thinking into the reservation debate? Why are we still stuck with the 90s ideology? Why is the Attorney General, who is espousing the government's view in court, arguing against introducing a creamy layer elimination in reservation for promotion in SC/ST when a similar layer actually exists for the OBCs? I mean, those are simple questions. And I also know that people within your party espouse that view. They embrace this view. It's just politically, perhaps it's going to be suicidal. So is politics behind your stand right now?
No, you see, first of all, what the Supreme Court question they've asked, I mean, these questions have been asked by many people, and this is nothing new. In society, you know, different sections, different people have been asking these questions for almost forever. As far as our party is concerned, we are a very large party, you know, with multiple minds and multiple hearts. So some people have some other ideas, others have different ideas. That's how I believe a democratic political party should be, or should function, or should think. So in a democracy, that's very important. But that said, the important thing is that, you know, we go to ask these questions. I live in Delhi, interact extensively with bureaucrats, you know, across ministries and across, you know, power pillars. And to say that there is no discrimination against SC and ST, even if they become IAS officer, or even they, you know, let's say, rise to the level of joint secretary and all that, answer is yes, there is discrimination. The fact is that, you know, our caste system and this discrimination against SC and ST is so deeply rooted that even if you, you know, get to that level, it continues. And the question is, how many families, for instance, are enjoying these benefits at the second generation level and third generation level? You can count them on fingers, literally. So I think, you know, we need to ask these questions, and therefore, you know, whether we want really to do something for these people or we don't want to do it. I'm not for, keep the politics aside, but we are in touch with the reality on what's happening on the ground. And
okay,
I just say,
I take that
that's
point.
the question. It goes for bureaucracy in the country. It goes for practically all important walks of life.
Okay, okay. I take that point. Viewers, in case you're wondering why we don't have a Congress representative in the panel, it's because I'd reckon he'd speak the same language that Narendra Taneja of the BJP is speaking. And so we thought, let's get a diverse view, and which is why we've got Raghav Awasthi, who's a lawyer and who's also a member of the RSS. Raghav, I know you wanted to respond to the point made by Kanchalaya earlier in the show, but I want to add a question there, which is that even the court, even the Supreme Court points out, and, you know, I don't think the idea is to sort of, you know, spread panic, that the concern is not with entry-level reservation. No one is talking or debating the need to review entry-level reservation. The issue is the accelerated promotion for SC/ST employees without looking into their status of employment. So, don't you believe it's important that we draw a line somewhere, or do you agree with Narendra Taneja of the BJP saying that it's something that cannot be done right now?
I think it would be rather, you know, it would be unfortunate if this debate were to be framed in the sort of generic terms that Mr. LIA seeks to do, let's first examine what the Supreme Court has said. Obviously, what fell from the Supreme Court was an oral observation, and we don't know yet what the judgment would be. But I don't think the Supreme Court has said that the 15% quota for Dalits, for the SCs in particular, and the 7% for the STs should be done away with, even when it comes to promotion. This is not something that the Honorable Supreme Court has said or suggested. So let's be very clear about that. All that the Supreme Court has said is that let's do one thing, let's figure out as to whether amongst this corpus of Dalits, whether there are some people who are more deserving of an opportunity, deserving of a helping hand. And this is all that the Supreme Court has said. And as a matter of fact, this is something that Dalit thinkers and activists throughout the country should be welcoming. Because at the end of the day, the whole purpose of having a system of affirmative action like reservation is to, like the Jaggi pointed out, is to ensure that those who are at the bottom of the pile do not feel left out. And that would necessarily entail ensuring that those who already had the benefits of reservation are asked to step aside. Nobody, and I repeat, nobody, not even the Supreme Court and nobody even in the RSS or the BJP has said that the 15% quota for Dalits and the 7% for the STs should be done away with. Nobody is saying that, so I don't understand what the fuss is about. But if there are some people who would like to oversimplify things and put everything in generic terms just so they can score political brownie points, then I think and then there is very little that you can discuss.
But Raghav, I want to come in on that point. Political brownie points set aside, do you realistically believe, because the political class makes this a binary sort of a decision, you know, you either for reservations or you're against reservations. Do you realistically believe that entry-level reservation alone is enough to provide level playing field for SC/STs who've had to suffer decades of backwardness?
Yes.
You know, caste has been a tool that has kept people out of development.
I completely agree with you. Let me answer your question. I completely agree with you, and therefore I think there should be reservation and promotion as well. The 15% for SCs and the 7% quota for STs should remain even as far as promotion is concerned. But when it comes to considering who is more deserving of these benefits, then the Supreme Court has merely suggested that the relative backwardness of two candidates, although both might be SCs, should be taken into account. And as long as you are ensuring that there is 15%, 7% representation for SC and ST respectively at every level. I just wonder if that relative
backwardness is going to bring in some amount of discretion. That's my only point.
At every level, if you're doing that, I don't see why people like Mr. Kanchalaya should have a problem with it. Unless Mr. Kanchalaya just wants to, you know, take these swipes against the BJP government, then I don't think I should have.
I take that point. I take that point, Raghav. Obviously, I have a quick question for Jaggi. I take that point. Okay, I take that point. Jaggi, let's sort of put some context to this conversation. Let's look at the 2006 Nagaraj case verdict that in some sense is a bone of contention here that's being reviewed by the Supreme Court. And do you believe that in some sense it defines a framework for quota and promotions? There were three riders which were states must collect quantifiable data to determine backwardness, determine adequacy of SC/ST representation in jobs, and keep overall efficiency in administration in mind while granting promotion. So is this a good enough framework for determining the merits for quota and promotion?
Yes, I think that was an excellent framework to start with. The problem is nobody wants to bell the cat, because once you say you have to follow this criteria, then you will have to start grading people according to performance. You'll have to start saying who was really left out. You'll have to make those socio-economic comparisons and say, okay, this particular Dalit subcaste is actually benefited a lot from it, and this has not. I mean, whether you'll have to say whether the Jatavs have benefited, but not the non-Jatavs, the Pasis and the others. I mean, that's the way you have to look at it. I mean, the Dobis and others. I mean, I think there are lots of castes that have actually been completely left out of the reservation pile, and we were still arguing about the guys who already benefited from it. So without the application of this framework, we cannot actually improve Dalit representation in the services. The second thing is, the problem with political parties is that the minute you give them a framework like this, then they know they have to choose, and then they know then they will lose the Dalit constituency, because if you say that these categories will not qualify, or people who have a certain level of income will not qualify, people who do not have a certain level of identifiable merit cannot be pushed up and promoted. If you start making those things, then soon there will be huge dissensions within the Dalit camp, which the Dalit parties do not want to do. They want to create a super Dalit identity by preserving, by claiming that they are one single caste, whereas actually the problem is there is a huge amount of dissension within the subgroups of Dalits, and no government wants to touch this with a barge pole. That is their problem.
Okay, Jaggi, hold that thought. I want to get in Kancha earlier. And Kancha, you know, the question really is, the 2006 verdict said explicitly that reservation in promotion must not affect administrative efficiency. Indira Jaising, who is in favor of quota for promotion, argues that annual confidential records are prepared at state level, and one of the factors scrutinized is administrative efficiency. And so the incompetent won't qualify for a promotion nonetheless. But we all know how promotions happen in the government service. It is not so objective. Perhaps meritocracy is never the most driving factor. Do you agree with us?
You know, fundamentally what happens in the system is that, take for example the university. A person who becomes a lecturer, who qualifies for a reader and then for a professor position, at that level, incompetency question is a very minimal question, even in IAS, IPS kind of situations. Now, what is central to the whole question of reservations in promotions is, you know, I agree with the BJP friend who said that at all levels there is no disagreement on that question, even from my point. The issue is that selection committees have been essentially constituted of, by and large, the upper caste, and some of them are anti-reservationists because of the structural problem. Therefore, entry level, if there is a division within the SCs, even I am not opposed. For example, BJP has now said that about OBC,
point of consideration here,
a division in the OBC category, even at the central level. That
should
can
be
extended
removed.
to scheduled caste. People are asking for that. But even when it comes to promotions, all the top levels are not being filled through promotional selection committees. It is not automatic. Therefore, there is a need for reservation. If it is automatic service-based, there is no need for reservation there. That is the whole question. I think the Supreme Court has to look at the whole structural issue in which the caste question is involved. Otherwise,
Okay, I take that point. I take that point. Naren Taneja, I want to draw you back to the question that I asked Jaggi as well, which is the riders that was set up in 2006 by the court as a framework for, for having a quota for in promotion for SC and ST. But I mean, are these conditions so onerous? Is this framework so difficult to implement, where you assert an administrative efficiency of the respective kind? I mean, keeping administrative efficiency in mind, which I reckon should be the topmost priority of any government. I mean, why is the Attorney General arguing against these conditions, calling it onerous, and saying that this framework has virtually halted promotions for SC/ST candidates?
I think you see, with all due respect to the Supreme Court, is the kind of ultimate court in the country, and I respect every single word, every single letter of what the Supreme Court says. But at matters like this, at the end of the day, Parliament and society, I mean, they have to take the final call. And of course, Parliament represents the society. Parliament represents the people. I fully agree with this, and my personal view is that, of course, when it comes to bureaucracy or the government job, efficiency and merit and quality should never ever be allowed to suffer. Otherwise, the entire country suffers. I agree. I go along with this view. And so somewhere we need to rework the entire architecture. That's the solution. And when it comes to, this view that, second generation, I think there needs to be a very scientific analysis of the whole thing by the Supreme Court, by the government, by non-government bodies and all that. Because this view, I interact with bureaucrats 5 or 6 every day. And I ask a simple question, how many scheduled castes, scheduled tribes really are the secretaries or at that level? You just look at the figures from 1951 and now. Even within the upper class, there have been only one particular caste that has, got the maximum number of opportunity in terms of getting appointed as secretaries and cabinet secretaries. So I share with you, you see that there is this discrimination. You have to have some kind of mechanism so that if there is discrimination, so that they really don't fall victim to this discrimination. Those who say there is no discrimination at the entry level, after that it's all stopped because you have become an IAS or PCS, no, there is no truth in it. The fact is, even if you become an IAS, discrimination continues because it has nothing to do with your status as an IAS officer or as a government bureaucrat. The society works on its own, it has got its own laws and its own principles.
Right. Okay. Naren Taneja, let me come in. I want to go to Raghav Avasthi. Just let me come in for a minute there. You're absolutely bang on. I come from a part of UP where caste is so entrenched that a district magistrate who comes from an SC/ST caste has to actually stand up to a Chudbaiya Neta. That's the reality of caste in this country. We cannot wish that away. I just want to put that point across. But Raghav, Avasthi, you know, the more nuanced suggestion also that's coming in from a lot of people like Shanti Bhushan and you know, Rajiv Dhawan is that government must advertise top posts for direct recruitment and provide reservations for SC/STs in that. Do you believe that's a feasible option at all? Do you believe that kind of addresses the anomalies that we've discussed through the show?
Definitely. I think there is nothing wrong with it if there is lateral entry, but that's a separate debate. Let me just come back to the one point that the Jaggi made, wherein he said that political parties feel that if they try and ensure that the benefits of reservation reach the most backward amongst the Dalit community, then they will bleed votes. I, with respect, do not agree with him. Because I do feel that this myth of this united and monolithic Dalit vote bank, it's an urban legend and I don't buy into it. We need to ensure that those who are most marginalized amongst the Dalit community, they should get the benefit of the 15% reservation at every level. And I don't think any Dalit activist or scholar can have any bone to pick with this proposition. Because the same argument that is used to justify affirmative action or reservation per se can be used to justify the exclusion of those who have already benefited from reservation without necessarily compromising the size of the pie itself, the 15% slice of the pie. That's my limited point. But like I said, this debate cannot be framed in generic terms. Everybody agrees that there has been systemic discrimination against SCs and STs in India, and that should be addressed. But the manner in which you go about addressing it is also important. You can't have this particular creamy layer of the Dalits, that corners all the benefits.
Right.
And this is something that we should look into.
I wonder if there is space for a nuanced debate of sorts on reservations, because it's so politically suicidal to talk about this. But Kancha Alaya, let me come to you. We're a little short of time on the show, but let's look at the big picture. There is a genuine concern amongst people that reservations are here till perpetuity. Till the kingdom arrives, the reservation will stay on. I mean, look at the recent protests. You've got some of the most dominant castes like Jats, Marathas, Gujjars fighting for reservations. And this is a possible ticking bomb.
No, see, the question that you are asking relates to the question of Supreme Court in an indirect way, that should not there be a time frame for reservation, and which section should come into this. My answer to that is, unfortunately, historically, for example, the Shudras, the Dalits, the OBCs, and the tribals were not allowed to read and write in Sanskrit, and in the spiritual domain as well. Now, ever since, the greatest mistake that Indian administration committed was that English medium was put in the private sector, regional languages in the government sector, where the SC, ST, OBCs are rooted in agrarian productive systems. Now, my point is, if you equalize language, content, standard-wise, every school, public and private, after 25 years remove entire reservation, India will be far ahead in equality issue.
Okay.
But that, even BJP is not addressing. That is my worry.
Okay.
Why more and more private English medium schools with industrialists,
Okay.
where I went to Ashoka University, not a single Jat was there.
Okay.
105 leadership people were there in the training course, not a single Jat, not a single Gujjar, not a single Maratha. 58 were Brahmins, 38 were Baniyas, only 4 OBCs, only 3 Muslims, only 2 Christians.
Okay, I take that point, Kancha. I take that point. Allow me to interrupt you. Completely running out of time. I'm going to let Jaggi have the last word. And Jaggi, let's just step back and again look at it, look at this in the larger context. And is it in some sense, does it pain you? I mean, you spoke about it briefly. Is it just compulsions of vote bank politics that explains why in India we can't even have a nuanced debate on the issue of reservations, that no political party on the left or the right will dare rake up this issue fearing political consequences, will dare look at this issue of whether we need to even, to even have a conversation on whether we need to bring in the creamy layer for SC/ST promotions. I mean, is it just, the sad part of vote bank politics?
So I'll make 2 points. One thing is, the point is the minute you say that you're going to eliminate the creamy layer, then all the vocal sections of Dalits come together and start making this an issue. Oh, but I think the BJP or whoever it is going to remove, is acting against Dalits. So the minute that kind of narrative comes in, then immediately even a BJP will step back and say, we will not do anything. We will do exactly what the vocal section says. So we are listening to the vocal sections and not the marginalized sections of Dalits. Second thing I will say, when it comes to Dalits, why they are not there at the top levels of Indian administrative service or other bureaucratic position, there is a very simple reason beyond discrimination, and that issue is very, very simple. The age of entry of Dalits is much higher than the average age of entry of non-Dalit candidates. This is what makes that when you have a time-bound promotions in bureaucracy, obviously a Dalit will retire much earlier than the other guy. So he will never reach say secretary level position or additional secretary level position, which will come only in the last 3-4 years before retirement. So if your age at entry of Dalit is much higher than the others, you will automatically not reach the top, because you will retire by the time you reach those top levels.
But that's also social milieu, no? No, Jaggi, you make a good point there about age, but I don't think anything explains the high concentration of absolute top power and top positions with the upper caste. I mean, numbers, one after the other suggest,
Made a nuance, but let me come in, please.
Yeah, sure. Quickly, 30 seconds.
I think the point that is being made is simple. Nobody is saying that this relaxation of age limit is something that should not be done because of the social milieu, but it has an effect, and the effect is that since the Dalit candidates who've had a comparatively greater number of chances, would obviously automatically be better represented in the service.
But there's a reason why the Constitution provides for a greater number of chances, Raghav Awasthi.
The Constitution does not provide for
I'm
these
saying
chances.
the laws provide for a greater number of chances. There's a reason why that reservation is there, because remember, caste has been legitimized. No, caste discrimination in this country has been legitimized by laws and custom. Let's not turn away from that. This cannot be a binary debate. Yes, there needs to be a relook at reservation laws. Yes, the creamy layer of Dalits cannot be the sole beneficiaries of reservation. It needs to be open up to the less unfortunate Dalits. But the narrative of doing away with reservation altogether is also a very erroneously placed argument that some sections of Indian society are beginning to make, including Indian politicians who are now shying away from that.
Timed out on this first leg of the India development debate. Raghav, Jaggi, Kancha Ilaiah and Narendra Taneja, appreciate you joining us with your perspective. We'll slip into a short break. On the other side, we'll put the spotlight on the slugfest between WhatsApp and the Indian government, which is escalating. The big fight over fake news is what we're talking about. On the other side, keep it with ET now.